James struggles to work out what to eat. He spends his days just eating chicken and rice, and every now and then, of course, he'll add some greenery to his plate, a little bit of broccoli, a little bit of spinach. He thinks that's going to improve it, but it's not enough. He's still missing a ton of needed nutrients, so in the end, he falls for dumb diets like carnivore. Anatoly has perfected his diet. He knows what he's got to eat, what he's going to take from each sort of food group, how he's going to get his nutrients in, exactly what he needs to do. I'm pouring the rice onto the scale, of course, the bowl and stuff, and I'm pouring the pasta in, and months and months and months go by of this, me tracking every single thing, but I'm not making any progress. It's so strange because I'm measuring everything, and I think I'm doing the right stuff, but it turns out I'm not measuring it wrong. I've been logging this rice and this pasta as uncooked. Do you know how bad that is? I've been logging it incorrectly, and I'm just not reaching my goals because I'm measuring it wrong. And this is when I first started, right? And I'm struggling with macronutrients. I'm struggling with that. That is like the easiest thing to do. That is just your protein, your fat, and your carbs. If I struggled to do that back then, I've asked genuinely countless people about micronutrients. They've sent me their macronutrients. They don't know what micronutrients are. Everyone struggles with it. No one really knows what to do or what it's for or how to optimize it. And this is why people fail to make an improvement. So I'm going to give you an actionable step, which is pretty much the most important thing in the video. Open up your phone and download something called Chronometer. This is pretty much the best tracking app. It not only lets us see our calories and our macronutrients, but it lets us see our micronutrients too, which is going to end up being one of the most important things when we fix all the macro stuff. And even better, it has that scan barcode feature, so whenever you get something from the store, you can make sure that it's just in there. This is something we're going to be using forever. Okay, so let's get into macros then. So protein. Protein is very easy to work out how much to eat, and in fact, a lot of people eat too much of it, which is not the best considering it's one of the most important things to consume. So it's quite difficult to calculate your protein in a sense. You've got to calculate your body fat percentage. And you can do this by looking at graphs. Literally just Google body fat percentage graph. And if you're male, look at the male one. If you're female, obviously look at the female one. And then you can kind of guess where you are. Now, you'll probably underestimate this, and that's actually okay, because if you underestimate it, you'll be eating more protein than you need. The worst case would be overestimating it, and then you don't get enough protein. So that's completely fine. Now, when you get this number, you can calculate your fat mass. And if you take your fat mass away from your total mass, you're left with something called your lean body mass. Now, this, in pounds, is the exact amount of grams of protein your body needs. That's it. And now what does protein do? Of course, it will build more muscle. Like, that's obviously the reason we're doing it. But it's not just that. It's also repairing tissue, making sure your skin's good, making sure your hair's good, just everything. Like your joint health. It's just, this is probably one of the most important things, at least people would consider it to be. Now, there's this whole thing going on about protein quality and protein digestibility, and it's this sort of idea that certain protein sources aren't complete. They're missing certain things. Now, that's cool, but you don't have to worry. See, if I have some bread and it's missing a certain type of protein, and I have something else that's missing a certain type of protein, and I have something else that's missing a certain type of protein, they all just balance out because they're not missing all the proteins, they're just missing parts of it. And when I say proteins here, I'm talking like the building blocks of the protein itself, if that makes sense. So whenever anyone yaps on about protein quality or protein digestibility, just ignore them. It doesn't matter. You're going to get enough protein even if it's some weird thing, so long as you're varying your protein sources. If you're only eating gluten as your protein, sure, maybe you're going to come across some roadblocks, but no one is doing that. I'm not a vegan, and I'm not here to push a vegan diet on you, on a plant-based diet or anything, but do try and reduce your red meat intake as much as possible. Now, I'm not saying you can't eat it ever again. If you want to look a little bit further into this, check out the studies in the description, but I'm not going to force you to do this. It doesn't really matter too much. It's just long term, yeah, you'd probably live longer if you did that. You'd probably get less heart disease. But going off completely that, I don't want to talk about that for the entire video. Fat. How much fat do we need? Well, similar to that lean body mass we got earlier, If we throw that into kilograms now, simple conversion, we divide by 2.2, or maybe you had it in kilos in the first place and you had to convert it up to pounds, which I probably should have walked someone through how to do. I mean, it's a simple Google search, it doesn't really matter. But fat, we need 1 gram per kilo of lean body mass. Very, very simple as well. And this is going to be essentially hormone health. There's a lot of other processes attached to it, but if we want to produce hormones, we need fats. They're the building blocks for hormones. If we don't have any fat, we can't really effectively build hormones, and we're going to be in some like stupidly awful place, and we're going to feel not good. Now, there's this whole belief too that saturated fats are good. There's a lot of rubbish out there on which fats are good. But you can go downstairs. You can go down to the comment section and take a look at the saturated fat section, where there's a few studies you can check out to understand, the sort of after effects of saturated fat on your cholesterol and how it can affect you. I mean, I really wouldn't worry about this too much. This is, again, probably going to be something where you come back to this video in like 2 months from now and you start worrying about it then. Because right now we're just going to focus on giving you a good diet. Again, we're going to go into micronutrients a bit later, but that's a reason why you shouldn't have it sky high. You shouldn't be like spamming tons and tons of fats. You shouldn't really be going beyond the number it tells you to eat. We want to keep this somewhat low. Of course, we can go like 20% higher. It's completely fine. I wouldn't go lower than that, but let's not overdo the protein. The fat. Oh goodness, this is going to be a long video. So next one, the carbs. Carbs is the last macro, and there's a macro which is technically a macro, water. We're going to talk about that later, but not in this section, because it's very, like, it's not moving the needle. Now carbs is quite interesting. So when you figure out how many calories you need to eat, which I probably should have spoken about earlier, but the calories you need to eat will basically be, if you want to gain weight, you eat more. If you want to lose weight, you eat less. And when I say eat less, I'm talking about that relative to your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure, and then there should be a calculator in the description you can easily use to calculate that. It may not be 100% accurate, so you may need to alter the calories as you go along, just to make sure that you're getting the sort of weight gain or weight loss you desire. The simple way of imagining it is 1 gram is 1 calorie like a day. So one calorie surplus would be 1 gram gained a week. 1 calorie deficit would be 1 gram lost a week. And of course, when we're typically not doing it like within the grams, we're usually doing like 200 or 500 or something. But that's a really great way to work that out. I'm not going to touch too much into calories, even though I should earlier, apart from the fact of, if you're bulking, don't go above a 500 surplus, and no, that's what I want to say. So the way we're going to work out your carbs is we're just going to take the remainder of your calories for like the amount you intend to eat, and that's all going to be carbs. Now, carbs are going to be like your body's best energy source. Your body loves carbs, essentially, and there's this whole stuff going on about how it's going to ruin your productivity. You have carbs and you can't think and you go into a food coma. No. I'm sorry, no. Anyone who tells you that they ate a cracker and then they woke up the next day and they couldn't think and then they got fired from their work, they're just overreacting. There's something wrong with their brain, and they think it's doing a lot more than it is. If anything, they're being brainwashed into believe that this carb is the devil and it's ruining their life. And if you do care, like let's say there is somewhat an effect when it comes to productivity, it's not long lasting. But if you do want to utilize carbs in the best way, I'd just recommend planning them in your day where, if you're going to be working in the morning, you don't have them until later in the day. Or if you're going to work out, you use like really, really high GI carbs before that workout and after, so you can spike your insulin and have a really, really awesome workout because you've got tons of readily available energy. And after spiking your insulin, to make sure your recovery is really good, to make sure that we're like throwing in that muscle protein synthesis like instantly. And so, but I mentioned GI earlier, and GI is literally just glycemic index. So every single carb will have a glycemic index, which I think it's the amount of time it takes to digest 50 grams. I could be wrong if it's 50 grams or not, but the idea is the lower the GI is, the longer it takes to digest, and the higher it is, the shorter it takes to digest. So if you get a really, really high one like sugar or white rice or something, it's gonna be in your system pretty quick. And then if you have something lower, like brown rice or sweet potatoes, I'm not entirely sure about sweet potatoes, I don't touch them, but I know regular potatoes. But stuff like that, it takes a while to digest, and usually it's because of other stuff involved, like fiber or some additional nutrients, or maybe some fat or protein thrown in. But most of your calories, you'd probably want to get that through some sort of lower, like medium GI carbs. Okay, into micronutrients. And man, this is a minefield. So honestly, if you really want to, I would just skip this section entirely into something that might be more interesting. But this is going to be very, very beneficial for anyone really trying to optimize their diet. This is for the people who are really, really serious and really want to get those results. So we're going to start with minerals. Essentially, micronutrients is minerals, vitamins, and minerals are basically like from the earth. They're minerals, and vitamins are from plants and technically food, but because of the plants. So the first one is calcium. Everyone knows calcium, and this is very important. Like, this is quite high priority when it comes to getting it, because this is your bone health, this is your teeth health, this is your muscle function. Anything from preventing muscle cramps to preventing osteoporosis and weak bones will be related to this. So make sure your calcium on the chronometer, and when I list all these, I'm talking about it in a chronometer sense. So you look at your chronometer to see if you get enough of it. I'm not going to tell you the best ways to get it, because you can just do that with a simple Google search, or you can even talk to ChatGPT and be like, I need X amount of grams of this. How do I do it? And it will help it. And you could be like, oh, that's too many calories. Give me an alternative. You know, you can work with someone. I'm not going to sit here and tell you 10 different ways to get like 30 different nutrients. Anyway, that's very important. So next we have phosphorus, and this is very important for your bone and cell membrane structure. If you don't get it, your bones aren't going to be able to, it's going to have poor mineralization, which is a very complicated way of saying something I don't really truly understand. That sounds quite bad. I'm just going to be authentic, and I don't really understand what bone mineralization is. I probably would if we use different words, but I do know you need to have adequate amounts for good health, and it comes over into sports science, so, make sure you're getting enough of that. That's kind of a moderate priority, though. It's not as high as some of the other stuff. Next, we have magnesium. Now, magnesium is super important when it comes to muscle and nerve function and bone health. So if you don't get enough of this, you're literally getting muscle cramps, you're getting tremors, you're getting heart issues, you don't feel good. I would recommend supplementing this, actually. Like, I highly recommend this, because it's very difficult to get enough magnesium day to day unless you do some really wacky stuff for your diet. So we can move on to potassium now, and this is a great supplement. And it does, general muscle function. It's a very important electrolyte, but it regulates your heart's rhythm. So if you don't have this, you're going to become very, very weak in the gym, and you're going to have really irregular heartbeat, and no one wants that sort of stuff. Also, heartbeat's not heartbeat. It's not a vegetable. Is a beet a vegetable? I don't know. Next we have sodium. Now, sodium is a really, really scary one to people, because they're like, I can't have too much sodium. And yeah, too much sodium is a problem. Too little sodium is a problem as well. Alongside all of these, if you have too much, it's bad. If you have too little, then you literally need this to function. We're not talking about stuff like arsenic. We don't need any of that to function, as far as I know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and we need like some, I don't know, millionth of a gram or something. But sodium makes sure you're having proper fluid balance in your body, and it's good for the nerves, man. If the nerves don't have sodium, then nerves do not work, and no one wants their nerves to not work. So if you don't get enough of that, the cramps are going to be crazy. And you're also going to get really, really low blood pressure, which we don't really want. So, iron. Iron is one of the most important things in Minecraft. If you don't get this, iron is very important for red blood cells. I mean, that's why people are like, oh, have some Guinness. It's got great iron. It's going to be really good for your baby. And it's like, well, should we be drinking alcohol if you're pregnant? Actually, yeah, it's fine to have a unit or two a week. I know that sounds quite strange, and you're probably going to look weirdly at a pregnant woman drinking. But that is completely unrelated to this video. And I don't believe alcohol is something you should be consuming if you're trying to optimize your health. So, iron is great for that, but it's also great for oxygen transport. If you don't get enough iron, anemia is the thing everyone pictures, but it's not just anemia. Well, I guess the symptoms are kind of anemic in essence. So just imagine fatigue, weakness. That's what happens when you don't get enough iron. Do you want to be working out if you have weakness and fatigue? Probably not. That sounds like it's going to block your potential to get stronger. Does it not? Okay, next we have zinc. Now, zinc is super, super huge, and it's another of these things I would highly recommend supplementing because you're just not going to get enough of it. Not only is this super important for immune function and great testosterone levels and healing your wounds, but it's also really good for your skin. If you don't get enough of this, your skin will start just completely being demolished. You'll be sick all the time. This is like one of the highest priority things in my opinion. Next we have copper. Copper is something which is, you have Minecraft, you have like the new update where it has like the electric rods. I don't even play that update, so I don't know why I'm bringing all the Minecraft references out today. But that is very important when it comes to energy production, and it is also very important when it comes to collagen formation. You see, we can take collagen as a protein and we can get benefits even though there's no real difference, and we can get great hair and skin and joints. But our body will do this naturally for us if we get adequate levels of protein using copper. If we don't get the copper, then we don't get the good skin, we don't get the good joints, we don't get the good hair unless we have to supplement collagen. And even then, when it comes to anemia, we're going to get anemia because we don't have enough copper. So it's not just all about collagen, right? And of course, the next one we have selenium. Everyone's favorite egg nutrient. It's an antioxidant. What is an antioxidant? No one really knows. Now, it's also really good for your thyroid. No one wants a broken thyroid. It's going to make it a bit more difficult to gain and lose weight. It's going to make you weaker. It's going to make you more fatigued. None of which you want in your optimal diet. Now, we also have iodine. This is something that is really important when it comes to like preventing diabetes. If you don't get enough chromium, you're going to become pre-diabetic. Not great. When we get to manganese, which is the penultimate nutrient, we have something that's very important for enzyme activation and bone development. Although this is almost a low priority thing. It doesn't matter if we don't get enough of it. We're probably not going to notice that much of a difference. Later on, we will, of course, optimize it. But if we're just trying to get our life together now, well, you probably skip this section, but if you're trying to do that, then I wouldn't really worry about that immediately. And then we have something I can never pronounce, which is molybdenum. I don't think I pronounced it. I went really quick, but this is very important for enzymes. If you don't know what enzymes are something that help you do a process, the jigsaw piece you learned about in science. And honestly, this is really low priority. It's quite rare, but some people who are deficient in it will like have it lead to metabolic issues. But again, it is quite rare. Now, the vitamins, the ones everyone knows, instead of the like random heavy metal, well, they're not heavy metals, but random metals. Vitamin A, vision, immune function, skin health. We're going to speedrun some of these. You don't get it, you're not going to see in the night. You're going to have a really weak immunity. I haven't actually been eating carrots. Well, I say carrots. Carrots are a really easy way to get vitamin. Like one carrot is like, like 250 or like 500 mg of vitamin A, which is almost like half of what you need. I wasn't really having enough vitamin A in my cut, and it's just as if I was having a carrot because of problems. I don't know if I'll mention it today or another video, or who knows. But I did actually get sick, so maybe that was related, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I should have been having that one carrot a day. It's only like a couple calories. Next we have vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. You probably noticed this in your pre-workouts if you've ever had it. This helps you convert food into energy. Boom. Don't get enough. Fatigue, no damage. It's going to become a lot of this, fatigue. And this is why I'm like really pointing out that you need to have enough of this stuff. Vitamin B2, riboflavin. Why did I say like that? This is good again for energy production. All the B's are basically good for like metabolism almost. Don't get enough. Anemia, sore throat, cracked skin. See, some of this stuff you wouldn't even notice. And that's why it's important to make sure we're getting enough. Niacin, vitamin B3. Don't want to get too much of it, but it's very important for metabolism and DNA repair. Don't get enough. Skin disorder. Vitamin B5. Pantothenic acid, I think. Very essential for fatty acid synthesis, which is how we can properly utilize the fat we're consuming. If we don't get enough of this, it probably will just come out, sadly, or be digested partially. I don't know, but you're going to get neurological issues if you don't have enough of that, because estrogen is neurological, is neuroprotective. You don't get enough estrogen because you can't make it, and your brain goes Vitamin B7, biotin, very good for healthy skin, very good for metabolism. I say metabolism not in a sense of like, oh, I have a high metabolism, man. I just keep eating and I can't gain weight. Like, it's not like that. Metabolism is just good. Metabolic health is everything inside your body, all those biological pathways working the way they intended to, and not only doing that, but thriving. So if you don't get enough biotin, you're going to have skin rashes, your hair is going to fall out, and you can be fatigued. Again, like I said, all the B's are about fatigue. So vitamin B9, folate, or folic acid. This is very important for DNA synthesis and cell growth. And cell growth is kind of how you stay alive, so you probably want enough folate. You don't get enough of that. Well, if you're like a little baby and your mom's not getting enough of that, for one, you get born defected because you don't even have folate. I shouldn't have laughed. But if you don't get enough of that, you probably will go down the path of cognitive issues, which is not really ideal. Now we have vitamin B12, cobalamin. Some of these are really hard to pronounce. So this will support your nerve function and also your blood cell formation. Very, very similar to other stuff. You don't get enough of it, you're going to get fatigue because it's a B. You're going to get anemic, you're going to get nerve damage. Not great. Now we can move past the Bs, we can move the Bs to fatigued. And vitamin C. Vitamin C is that thing in lemons and citric stuff everyone loves. So this is an antioxidant. Woohoo! Still don't know what antioxidant means, no one does. This will... Whoops, my headphones fell. This will really basically just help you not get scurvy. That's kind of what it comes to. You know, you're not a pirate, you're not going to get scurvy. Which is probably how the One Piece team didn't get scurvy with all their tangerines. But vitamin D is the next one, and this is pretty huge for tea. You can get a lot of it by just walking outside. If you're in a colder climate, you probably want to supplement it. I say colder, but I more mean like less sunlight. Now, you don't get this, your legs start feeling awful. It's called rickets in children and osteoporosis in adults, but you don't want that. It's painful. I think I've had it before, but if I haven't, then it means it's really, really painful. So next we have vitamin E, and this is again an antioxidant. Helps protect your cell membranes. You don't want to have too little. You're going to get weak. You're going to get nerve damage. The last one is vitamin K, and this is pretty huge for when it comes to making sure that your blood can clot. Of course, if you have too much of it, that sounds like an issue. You don't want your entire body to just clot instantly. But if you don't get enough of it, one cut, you know you're a hemophiliac now, you're going to bleed out, and you're going to die. So that's not great. Now, we can move past that. We can talk into timing. Timing is something which we probably will look into later on in your diet, but I don't think it's too necessary now. Although I will consider it to be after all the macros. You know, I've structured this in a very I've structured this in a very hierarchical way because I want to make sure. Why did I even explain all the micronutrients instead of just saying you can track it on Chronometer and make sure you're getting all? I guess I'm trying to scare people. That's what it comes to. But timing. Protein directly before bed is probably what I would consider to be one of the most important things, considering that is the longest amount of time you're going about consuming food and protein. So you did it before bed and you're going to be good. Now, this is also something which doesn't mess with sleep. People will tell you it does. It doesn't. You can go down, you can read a study on that. But when it comes to actually splitting protein throughout the day, you just want to split it between 3 meals minimum. I'm not going to include the bedtime one, but you want to split it so you're making sure that you can always peak that muscle protein synthesis. You can do more if you really wanted to. It becomes a bit excessive, I believe, after 3. If you're really, really devoted, sure, why not? But I don't think anyone needs to be that devoted until they've like done all the rest of the stuff in the video. And no, before a workout, you do not need protein. It doesn't matter, and you probably shouldn't have it because you get that in your system. Your carbs aren't going to digest as quickly. You're going to have stuff in your stomach. You're not going to be able to push as hard, especially on a leg day, and you're probably going to throw up. Now, as you move on to something which potentially we should have started with, but that is about avoiding bad information. You see, there's a lot of bad information out there. For example, protein timing probably doesn't matter until the micronutrients, the macronutrients is dialed in. And yet people out there will tell you that it's one of the most important things. That if you're not focusing on that, which is quite minor in honesty, you're not going to get the results you want. That's bad. We also have people telling you that oats is a pre-workout meal. Why? Because they think it's healthy. Well, here's the thing. We discussed earlier that you need to have something high GI so you can use the energy quickly and also so it's digested quickly. Oats oats take like 4 to 6 hours to digest, which means you take it as a pre-workout. Even if you had it 2 hours before, you would do your workout. You know, you would drive to the gym, you do your workout, you drive back, you'd have your post-workout meal, and it would still be digesting. See what I mean? Like, there's a lot of misinformation. You have to avoid this sort of stuff. We also have people going on about how raw milk is a superfood. You can go in the description. You can read a study on how it's definitely not. There's a couple there, actually. We also have stuff about how natural's best. You can go down the description. You can read about how it's not. We also have stuff about how seed oils are bad. You can go down to the description. You can see why it's not. And we also have stuff about how artificial sweeteners are bad. You can go down and see why it's not. We also have stuff about how red dye is bad. You can go down and see why it's not. Now, all of this is stuff that people will continuously use to fear you into consuming their content, to switching your life around, to focusing on stuff that really doesn't matter, when we have things that do actually matter, are proven to matter, and not stuff that have literally no evidence within any sort of research, even though they've been heavily explored. So I actually forgot something, and I'm just interjecting. Look, I got my dinner like my chicken in half, but I forgot that fiber, right? So fibers, we're going to throw it in the micronutrients section. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but fiber, not only is it great for society, not only is it great for gut health and general health, but just get enough fiber. Fiber is so important. Also makes your trips to the bathroom a bit nicer. Let's move into the next section. I don't want to stay up in that and talking about how bad the information is. Calorie deficits and surpluses. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is very important, obviously. When we're talking about muscle gain, we're trying to build muscle. We're trying to be in that muscle building optimal state of like more calories. Now, of course, if we're obese, if we have too much, we're going to build less muscle because of, well, I don't know if I want to mention it, but there's something called P ratio, which is basically the belief that the more fat you have, the worse your insulin sensitive, or is it insulin? The worse your insulin resistance is. I'm gonna have to Google something quickly. Sorry, guys. Insulin resistance. Okay. Yeah, insulin sensitivity. So insulin sensitivity, it's hard to get the two. Look, it's easy to get the two confused. I am sorry. But insulin sensitivity is your body's ability to make sure that the carbs are being like used properly, essentially. And insulin resistance is when your body's really inefficient with carbs and just stores it in like everywhere, like really badly and just everywhere. So when you start a cut. Wait, what am I talking about? Starting a cut. Anyway, P ratio is the idea that when you get higher up, when you start becoming pre-diabetic, when you have so much body fat, your body doesn't really have a place to store it. Okay? So how you store fat is your fat cells get bigger and bigger and bigger, unless you have a rare genetic disorder, which isn't really that rare, but it's like 1 in 10 people. You cannot generate new fat cells to store fat. So it has to start finding other places to store fat, and that ends up being like intramuscular, where you can literally look like a piece of Wagyu beef, or like in your like what's it called, in your gut, not your gut, but your like, you know, visceral fat around your abdomen and your abdominal, or all around your organs, because there is already fat cells there which are there to protect the organs, to also have warmth and stuff, but they're not really supposed to grow, but because there's nowhere else to put it, they grow and grow. And eventually what you end up having is a really inefficient body, which is not thinking about building muscle. And you will build muscle, but it'll be slower. So there is a need to become lean before you really go into like a mass building thing, even though a lot of people will tell you they just bulk. And even I always say it, but it's a lot more nuanced than that. I just think it's easy to tell people to bulk first, especially as it's kind of like the first time discipline comes. But I think we're far enough into this video for you to be someone where you're not really going to be like swayed by something when it comes to discipline and consistency, because it's literally probably like 25 minutes in. So when we are actually doing a cut, if we're coming off a bulk, we actually have an amazing ability to go super aggressive. And the reason we're able to go super aggressive is for this time where we're in like a muscle building prime environment where our hormones are really, really, really good, and we're just completely anabolic. For like the first 2 weeks coming off that, we're still anabolic. Like, we're still actually prioritizing building muscle. The body hasn't caught up to realizing we're in a deficit yet. And we can go pretty hard. Like, if we were already in the cut, there's going hard and aggressive is absolutely stupid, because we're already like tanked hormones. If we're in maintenance, it's a little bit more stupid because we're not tanked, but we're kind of just running along we haven't been pushing ourselves. And so that is a moment where you can be really aggressive and you can genuinely go down quite a lot. Now, I have an entire video on this, which I guess I'll link there if I remember, but the idea of how these aggressive deficits work is you get enough protein, like the amount we mentioned before, minimum. You get enough fat, again, the amount we mentioned before, minimum, and we go as aggressive as possible. We cut the carbs as much as we can handle. And alongside this, of course, we probably up the cardio. We try and burn more calories throughout the day. But this is something that stops when the sleep gets affected. And I know you're like, this is all about muscle growth. This is all about protecting your health. How can an aggressive cut do that? Well, think about this. If we shorten the amount of time we're in that deficit for, we're able to not only grow more muscle because we're able to have more time in like the actual primed best place to build muscle, but we have less amount of time in that area where our hormones are tanked. Our hormones are really, really rubbish because we're in a deficit. And so we want to minimize time in that for hormones too, for general health. And of course, if I haven't mentioned it already, if I have, I'm going to cut this, but when your sleep starts getting affected, that's when you stop. When it's like 2 nights within the last 7 days where you just couldn't sleep. I can't remember the exact frequency I came up with. The video will have that. But kind of simple stuff now. If you're bulking, kind of simple stuff now. A regular cut, just do like 500. 500 is very, very easy. That's going to be half a kilo a week, and you can get great results with that. Of course, also, I have to mention, the higher body fat you are, the easier a cut will be, just because you're so far from being lean, and kind of the issues that come along with a cut involve being leaner. Also, yes, you can build muscle in a cut, so don't worry about like not being able to build muscle. You're still going to be able to do that, and it's just always great to hear that not only are you preventing atrophy, but you're able to grow more. A bulk should never exceed 500 calories. That just goes to a point where you're putting on too muscle. Now, there's a lot of people who tell you should start really, really lean. You should go to 200. You shouldn't exceed 250. That amount is not measurable enough. It's not high enough. I'm sorry. You have to push it a bit. And yeah, don't drop cardio. People drop cardio, but keep it at 500. You will gain the muscle you desire, and if you go lower, you probably won't. And alongside this, adding in extra protein will not build extra muscle. The muscle is 4/5 water, I believe. Imagine if someone told you to have as much water as possible for muscle growth. They'd laugh at you. And how many people do you see saying, get extra protein for more muscle? Like, it just doesn't work like that. The ceiling for muscle is very, very low. And once you've reached it, I say very, very low, but compared to the average diet, it's not. Compared to the diet of people in this space, it is. I think that's enough when it comes to that. So we'll talk about supplements now. Most don't matter, but as I mentioned earlier, and I want to do a recap in case people want in the actual micronutrients section or like skip through or skim through it, is there some stuff that does. Now, I have a video about this in more detail, which is weird because this is a really, really detailed video, but I don't want it to be like 2 hours long. So even when optimizing a diet, it's very hard to get in zinc, magnesium, vitamin D3, and creatine. Creatine is almost impossible to get in, as our body does produce it, but if we wanted to get more than the amount we usually get, not like steroid sort of stuff, it's a very healthy and natural compound. I'm not going to put studies because shut up. I don't want a discussion. But those 3 I mentioned, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D3, although you can get it through your diet, well, I guess you can creatine too. But the point is, it's very difficult. And so supplementing these, like the 3 things you should be supplementing, I would get them. I really would. I literally just go on right now, go onto Amazon and just get them. Get zinc glycinate, magnesium glycinate, or biglycinate. Vitamin D3 can really be any form, but I would recommend, oh God, we're doing dosages now. Zinc, 25 to 50 grams. Magnesium, I would do 200 grams. I wouldn't go above that. Vitamin D3, I'd probably aim for 4,000 international units. Boom, we just did it, and that was kind of difficult. Creatine, don't need more than 5 grams a day. Until you get bigger, we can discuss that at a later point. I don't think it's necessary for you now. And we are not going to talk about protein powder. Why? It doesn't matter. We've spoken about protein before. I don't care how you get your protein. You know how much you need. You know you don't need to go over. And so protein powder is a useless supplement, or at least it's useless for me to talk about. And yeah, I'm talking about it. more so because I know people will question why I haven't. Hydration is very, very simple. 1 milliliter per calorie burned a day. Easy. That's actually like the easiest thing. And then we add 500 milliliters if you're taking creatine. Again, that's super easy. Now, across this, the most important thing just becomes be consistent. If you're not consistent with this, it's definitely not going to work. Here's the thing. I used to struggle with macronutrients. They were hard. Now I think I struggle with micronutrients, which are almost near impossible. There are a lot of people and they'll be like, oh, why do you even measure this stuff? It's so inconsistent and it's not accurate to track. It kind of is. We're just looking at trends. We're looking at getting a weekly average where we're getting 100% everything. It can be done. It should be done. And if we have the means to and we have an app which is pretty good at it, why not? The bad thing, the bad thing again, I mentioned a little bit earlier about carrots in the cut, but the issue there was I started my cut and I completely forgot about micronutrients. See, my diet beforehand when I was bulking had been optimized there, but I started cutting and I completely forgot I had to do that, and I was just looking at the macros. And then I took a look at the micronutrients and the breakdown after like 3 weeks, and it was lacking a lot, man. So I fixed it. Wasn't too difficult to fix. Didn't take too long. I guess that could be something with the level I'm at, where it's just very easy and autonomous and everything clicks in my brain. But that's why this sort of thing exists for you. You know, you might be like, oh, I don't have time for this. But if you only have to meal prep like once a week, or you pick favorite foods and log them on Cronometer, and then you continuously improve and you go, oh, why didn't I get enough vitamin A this week? And you're like, oh, okay, so if I add 1 carrot a day, it will fix it. You know, that's how you're going to end up improving it. And you might even believe that it's not worth it. But if you want that incredible clarity, if you want to be focused and put on as much muscle as possible, it's worth it. It definitely is worth it. Like, the only reason we're being told it's not by ourselves is because we don't want to put in the work to really fix it, and it's not even that work. But I know what you're thinking. Fletcher, you know, this is all well and good, but it's so much information, and you haven't even told me how to put food on the plate. Like, I know, I'll go into how to make a good meal in a little bit, but we're more so focusing... But putting together a good meal is more so honestly focusing on satiety. When we're talking about properly optimizing your diet, this is something you'll return to time and time again. You'll find what's missing, you'll compare it against Cronometer. You might only ever consume at maximum 60% of the information that I'm telling you, even though this is ridiculously simplified. So I literally want you to bookmark this and put it in your calendar to return once a month so you can come back and you can work out what you need to do. Also, maybe we should do a little exercise. I'd like you to, this should have been earlier. I'd like to pause the video and I want you to imagine what your diet would be like. And I want you to imagine what your life would be like if your diet was 100% dialed in. Imagine how you'd feel and how you'd look. pretty great, man, right? So when it comes to these meals are going to be 3 meals a day, but they're also going to be 5 meals a day. It depends how we look at it, what we class as a meal. So it's not really 5, but it's definitely not 3. The first meal, of course, is breakfast. We're going to have some balanced fats and proteins, etc. And you may choose to skip carbs. You know, you may choose to do some sort of keto in the morning and to have improved mental clarity. If you want, why not? But I'm going to be honest, when we really dial all that stuff in, all those micronutrients, you're going to feel great regardless of if you choose to skip carbs for a meal. I actually really enjoy having soups for breakfast. So I'll literally just get one of those stews. I'll make my own like instant ramen spices, and I'll get like actual like brown wheat noodles, and I'll put together with some vegetables, and I'll get some tofu, and I'll get really a lot of nutrients in that one meal. I mean, it's so good. But ideally we want this sort of meal to be our highest calorie meal. Reason being, we don't actually need too many calories before bed. We need calories for the day and not to sleep. So try and put a lot of your calories there, and that's probably going to be, if you're not throwing carbs in, you're probably going to be, you know, giving it a lot of your fat and a lot of your protein. Although we are trying to, you know, when we get to that level of protein timing, of course, split it across. When it comes to lunch, again, we want balanced fat, balanced protein, maybe even some carbs, you know, I would do it. But if this meal is after the gym, I definitely make sure we're getting enough carbs, because we need to carb up after the gym. And if it's close to the gym, make it after. If we're having protein and fat in, we don't actually want it before the gym. We don't want that messing with our workout. Now, when it comes to dinner, we definitely 100% want some carbs in that. The big thing here, though, is we don't want it within 3 hours of bed. We don't want it messing with our sleep. Protein on its own won't. Dinner, carbs, fat, yeah, that's going to mess with it. I'm sorry. Now, the other 2 meals were like the meals that don't really count. And these are your pre-workout meal, which is, a bunch of fast-acting carbs we mentioned, really high GI, about, 40 to 80. You can really exceed it if you want to. You can see what your body responds best to. But that's going to make sure that you're able to be in the best environment to have incredible force output within your session. And also your bedtime protein. Just downing a protein shake before bed for muscle protein, the MPS. I'm going to call it MPS. It could also be chicken breast. It could just make sure it's lean, essentially. And also, a little bit of an actionable step, again, is I'd like you to journal whether or not you're actually thinking much with the meals you're currently eating. Are you just kind of having random stuff that meets your macros? You're not really caring about the micronutrients? Are you not thinking too much about how these things go together? You're just looking at the number at the end of the day. Really be honest with yourself for this sort of thing. And eventually this is kind of your plan of action. So you want to first dial in your macros. You want to work out how much you need, when to have it. After that, you need to work out if you're getting enough macros. Use Chronometer, really make sure you're getting everything in. And then you can move to, avoiding all the rubbish out there, do your own research. Rubbish isn't seed oils. Rubbish is when it comes to maybe excessive meat consumption. Rubbish also becomes, maybe having too much sodium, having way too much of certain micronutrients, which are fat soluble, which basically means our body stores it inside instead of it being peed out, which is what happens if it's water soluble. And essentially, just don't focus on the small stuff. When we've got the big stuff dialed in, yeah, you can come back. But it's not just about your diet. The big stuff also includes your sleep. It includes your training. It includes working your mental health. And all of those need to be worked on before really getting into the small stuff of the diet. So it's not just about continuously improving the diet. If your training sucks, nothing's going to change. Your life's not going to change. Then just be consistent. And of course, if this is all too intimidating and you think you need some extra help, go onto Instagram, type in Paul Fitness, and just shoot me a DM.